Welcome today at the Hibernian Coffee Break. I have a special guest this evening here with me. It's Nikolaos Radouniklis, and he's a founder and he founded so many different companies. And I'm really happy to have you here, Nico, tonight. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to be your guest tonight and to have a joyful and meaningful conversation. I hope so.
Me too. So I would say let's start from the beginning with your study. So, Nico, what did you study?
I studied computer science in the University of Stuttgart, and the last year I had the honor to to get a scholarship for the University of California in Berkeley, where I finished my study as I said, in computer science early in the 90s, in the 1990s, quite long ago. Well, after I had finished my studies in 96, I had three choices. One of the choices was to start at Oracle, which was at that time not that known as it is known nowadays. It's the biggest, it's one of the biggest computer companies at that time, specializing in relational database systems. And this was an option to stay in the Bay Area. Then the second option was to return to Germany and to start working as a computer engineer / programmer in one of in a classical company. At that time, in the mid of the 90s, I think there was a quite huge demand for computer engineers. Since at that time it was very difficult for me to imagine to stop studying and start working 8 to 5 in a regular way, I was rather interesting to take the third option, which was go into the IT consulting, because I was particularly interested in learning a lot in different customer situations and in project organizations. So rather doing projects at different customers and having a faster pace in learning about different industries and about different challenges in the area where I was working. And that's why I decided to go to IT consulting, which finally was at the end of the day, this was my professional start, or this was the start of my professional career after studying. And as I said, I was I was particularly interested in doing projects in the area of individual software development, and that's what I've been doing in the first 5 years, I would say, working at projects for different companies, for one or two companies as an employee, and learning throughout projects.
But then you started founding your first company, isn't it so?
Okay, yeah.
What happened next?
And that was exactly after 5 years, or after, let's say, a couple of years, I realized that in a way, I had this kind of feeling that I had this entrepreneurial feeling that I wanted to do things by myself. And that I wanted, and it was not that I was unsatisfied with the situation working for other people, but I still had, in a way, this kind of entrepreneurial feeling, which at that time was not that typical compared to what is going on nowadays. I would say at that time, it was not normality that you would simply say, I want to set up my own business. And anyway, I decided to found my own company, and this was called CRM company. I was working in the field of implementing customer relation management solutions. I don't think we need to elaborate on what it is in detail, or if you're interested, I could explain to you what it is. At a glance, it was very simple. The idea was of customer relationship management at that point was to try to understand better the customer interactions by understanding the different touch points where the customer or the prospect, where prospects or customers were interacting with a company, and using this information, first of all, collecting all data regarding customer interactions and trying to build customer profiles in order to better sell and service goods towards a customer. That's more or less the idea. And I had, throughout the projects that I had done before, I had specialized in a way in that field, particularly in the area of technical implementation, which meant particularly being able to design and build larger systems for enterprise clients in the CRM field. And this was my specialization, and that was the first company that I started with a friend of mine. And this was the first try, and which was not unsuccessful, to be honest.
Yeah, I've read that it was really successful, but you didn't stop. You went on and founded your next company, Riverland Solutions. Is that right?
Exactly. That was after a couple of years, we realized that it's not that easy to build a company, to be honest. I mean, there is irrespective of the fact that you might have the knowledge, the know-how, the spirit, and the energy to create value to your customers and to provide really good and professional work and to meet the expectations. There are a lot of other things which I had to learn, to be honest. I mean, irrespective, it's not only about the work to be done. It's about the whole organization, the administration. It's about the people management. It's about selling and marketing your services so that the people understand the value.
What were the biggest challenges for you in that time?
I think the biggest challenges at that time was it was people and customers. So it was, and why was it like that? If you're a small company, or let's just say of 10 people, and this was the size which we had for a long time in CRM company, and you want to service enterprise customers, and this was the area where we had been active. So we had big pharmaceutical companies as clients. It's usually not that easy to pass classical processes at our clients, which usually try to prevent small companies working for the big companies. And why? Because there is a centrally organized purchase department which tries to consolidate the suppliers which supply services to their clients in order to have always somehow, let's say, in order to have some kind of order in place. You don't want, as a huge companies, to have 20,000 suppliers. You want to consolidate, you want to have your key suppliers, and particularly if you are, and we had been active in quite crucial processes, implementing crucial processes at clients. Huge clients are quite afraid of being dependent on small companies. You can understand why, because a small company, their fear is that a small company is not that, let's say, reliable in terms of, let's say, risk management compared to big suppliers. And this was one of the biggest challenge. It was not the fact that the departments which we work together with, IT departments or also other departments, they were super happy with our work. They always wanted to work with us. However, we always had to go through this challenge and the obstacle, which we managed quite well, to go through the purchase, to overcome the purchase process. This was one of the biggest challenges. And the other one at that time, and it's interesting to see how the philosophy and the times have changed. If you consider the world 15 years ago, I would say, or 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it was for people who were young people who were looking for a job, they were particularly interested in starting at huge companies which had a brand, like BMW, like
Mercedes.
Bayer, like Mercedes. This was for them important, and it's really interesting. And although small companies like us at that time had, let's say, something unique to offer to people. And what was our offer to people? Our offer to young people was like, you can be part of a small agile team, which you can get if you are willing. You can learn a lot. You have freedom, you have responsibility, and you can develop yourself personally and professionally. And this was, let's say, nowadays, this is, I would say, a huge asset, which is also perceived as some, let's say, as a huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But at that times, the branding was really important, and it was not that easy to find the type of people we were looking for and to convince them to work for us. And this is nowadays, I would say, this is way easier, because the philosophy of people has changed. The new generation thinks in a different way, and that's really good. Anyway,
I think so.
But this was the first small, let's say, or small. No, it was not a pilot. It was a real company, but it was, let's say, the first startup company, which was a great experience. But of course, I also learned that I had a couple of lessons where I realized we can do better.
What were your working hours at that time on your second company?
It was the first company. It was completely insane, to be honest. It was. I mean, it sounds like it sounds completely insane, but I would say it was always 14, 16 hours, no weekends. I had. It was not that easy, because at that time my first daughter came to was given birth by my wife, and it's like it's not that easy to really achieve work-life balance, and you have to learn to understand how to do it properly. Definitely, in my first company, I'm telling you, it was very simple. I was working for multiple clients. I was managing people, and in the nights I had to write invoices. That was the reality.
That sounds really crazy, and a big challenge for you, but also for your family.
Absolutely. I mean, you can do that if you're young, if you have the energy for a couple of years, but then you really need to change the modus operandi. You really need to learn to make your learnings and to understand how you can better create an organization around you where people working in a network can having people who are motivated working in a network around you can balance this completely out, and this works. In the meantime, in the beginning, I was not convinced that this is possible, but I can tell you, the reality, my personal reality, proves that you can do it really in a smart and clever way, with even better results, because first of all, I could find my work and life balance. And the second thing was, if you give responsibility to other people, then it allows the other people also to grow better. And that's exactly the key to have some kind of successful company built. And in addition, also share also the good moments, which I think is quite important.
That sounds, yes, totally right for me. So I would say let's go on. After the Riverland solution, then came Riverland Reply. What was this
Exactly. So
exactly?
basically, the first one was a CRM company. Then the second one was Riverland Solutions, which I founded together with a couple of people, I have to say, and was one of the founders of Riverland
Okay.
Solutions. Anne and Dave were two founders, and I was one of the co-founders. My role was there initially. I mean, one of the advantages if you found a company with a couple of people is clear. You can better scale. You can better deal with growth. You can define specific areas of responsibility, where people feel have an ownership, particular ownership for it. And my ownership at Riverland Solutions was, despite the fact that I was one of the founders, I was the CTO of the company. Nowadays we would call the role CTO, Chief Technology Officer. So my main responsibility was to define the technological portfolio, the kind of projects we would like to do, the technical competence that we needed to develop and further evolve in our company. And I would say it was, we had only, to give you some numbers, we had overall, I would say, more than 80 employees and external contributors for us, were around, between 10 and at the end, it was close to 20 million euro revenue, and with a very solid EBT, which was between 10 and 25%. Also active in the area of in the CRM area, because designing, building, and operating now also solutions in the customer relationship management area for enterprise clients. That was what we were doing, and as I said, the major advantage by having more founders is clear. You can better scale. The disadvantage is there is also disadvantage. The founders need really to be compatible with each other. And I don't mean by that they have to have the same skill, but they need to have the right attitude and particularly the trust. This is very, very important. So the trust, and there needs to be total trust and transparency. And it's crystal clear. The more founders you have, the more complexity in terms of human interaction you will end up with. Okay, but that was the second company, which was Riverland Solutions, which we later on sold to Reply, and which became Riverland Reply.
And then came Data Reply, I think.
Exactly, and this was also a very interesting story, because at Riverland and Riverland Reply and CRM company, I would say my key value for the company. What was my key value for the company? It was my technical expertise in that area. However, after having done 15 years customer relationship management systems, it was 2015. I have to say I was quite bored, or 2014. I was quite bored doing always the same. And I think this is also something, it's a classical characteristic, I would say, of people who have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit.
You want to do new things.
I felt, to be honest, brain dead, managing, optimizing existing field from 99.1 to 99.3%. I wanted simply a new challenge. And at that time, in the beginning of the 2000 or around 2012, there was a new paradigm in computer science coming to the market. It was the area, nowadays you would call it distributed computing, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence / machine learning. Machine learning is a pre-step of artificial intelligence. And I felt completely, let's say, attracted to these fields. And I saw that there was some kind of business opportunity. It's not that these fields, they existed also for many, many years in the computer science, and as a matter of fact, also when I did my study, we also did parts of this stuff, distributed computing and artificial intelligence. But at that time, it was not relevant for in the business field. And through, let's say, through the involvement, I would say, of there were two, I would say, let's say, trends at that time in the computer field. The one was clear. It was the fact that through the internet, more and more interactions happened through the digital channel, and you had more and more data through that. And then you had, of course, also the Internet of Things movement, or let's say where more and more devices were connected to the internet. And throughout this whole data which came up, you could, and this was exactly the field then, we could think about, design, and build new use cases using new technologies, as I said, distributed cloud computing, and machine learning and artificial intelligence, in order to use algorithms to take better decisions, or based on data, of course. And that was Data Reply was about. I was, let's say, a minor co-founder. The major co-founder was Reply, which is a large Italian IT firm. And I was with another colleague, a smaller co-founder of this company. And I was primarily, as a managing director, responsible to build this company from zero. So basically, we started again with 0 employees. I gave everything I had in Riverland Reply away. And I said, okay, let's start from zero. And here comes the story. Compared to the other companies, I didn't have the technical expertise, the in-depth expertise. I was not an expert anymore. But the person primarily in charge to find right people, to build a company culture, which was very, very important in our IT consulting area, and to build up an organization.
And how did you get the right stuff, the right people for
that's a very clever, that's exactly the question. Usually I would say you can do everything in your life the way that however everyone does it, or you can do it a little bit more clever way. And what my co-founder and myself, we called that clever moves or smart moves. We wanted always to do smart move. And I'm going to give you an example. And we had tons of smart moves for each idea, which not always turned out to be that smart. but the ones which worked out, we refined. The ones which didn't work out, we gave up. Very simple. So let me give you an example. 2 examples in the area of recruitment. So the one is, if you want to, and this is a pattern which I would call is rather related to a lot of work. So when you try to find good people, a lot of companies work with recruitment agencies. The problem is that I would consider 95% of the recruitment agencies not that really helpful. They cost a lot of time, and they don't have the right understanding of what you are looking for. So they simply don't get it. And in order to overcome this topic, it means you need to work hard, which means in our case, we tested more than 50 recruitment agencies.
50?
We did
crazy.
50 in Germany and outside Germany. and we came up with two recruitment agencies which were really providing that kind of people in terms of mindset and qualifications which met our criteria. And one of them was, for example, Hibernian Recruitment with Endemsing. And this is really important, that you have the stamina and you do this, you know what I mean? Because most of the companies which I've seen, or a lot of IT consulting companies, they consider this topic they don't focus properly on the topic recruitment. For them, they say, okay, I have an HR department which looks after recruitment. No, in the IT consulting company, the most important process is recruitment. It's to find the right people with the right attitude, the right qualification. And this is not that easy. In our case, for example, we ended up with people. We started also building recruitment connections for outside Germany. And from 120 people, I think we had more than 37 nationalities within data reply. And finding people outside Germany and bringing them to Germany is one thing. The other thing is you need to integrate them. You need to put pressure on them to learn the language. As a matter of fact, we had two teachers. We had our own two teachers which were giving lessons, which were going to the places where the consultants were working in order to teach them German. And we had strict goals for the consultants, what level of proficiency they needed to Goethe proficiency they needed to achieve in their language skills in German. Mm-hmm. And this is very important. So at another topic, when people come here, usually, I mean, you know, in Munich, for example, it's not that easy to find an accommodation.
That's right.
So we were really, really putting a lot of effort also in order to find accommodations for the people, to organize it, because we wanted, particularly this integration process, we wanted to make it as easy as possible so that the people could focus on their new challenge in their life by moving from another country to Germany. This is an example which is connected with a lot of effort. I'm going to give you a second example of a smart move. And this was the topic of data scientists. When we were looking for data scientists in 2015, starting in 2015, we realized then there was a complete lack of data scientists in Germany, and there was also not a clear understanding of the qualification of a data scientist. And
not only an online course, for example.
No, not only an online course, exactly. So what did we do? I mean, you will say, okay, it's super obvious. So usually the United States is always one step ahead. It's not untypical. So we looked what happens in the States, and we realized that in the States there were 3 programs for postgraduates giving free trainings, 2 months, the duration of 2 months. So it was a real long. It was not a training anymore. It was something like a mini study. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in order to prepare postgraduates in coming from mathematics or computer science, computer engineering or physics, that kind of profile, and giving them a heads-on start in data science and training them 2 months, 8 hours a day in data science. And this was there were 3 programs outside universities providing that, and we got connected to one of them. And we managed to build our own, we called that data incubator. This was the name of the program, our own data incubator program and platform for education for postgraduate people. And I mean, just imagine you're a great postgraduate student and you get this opportunity to get a first class training for 2 months for free. What would you do? You would apply for it, right?
Of course.
And we got hundreds of applications, not in the beginning, but throughout. Once this got viral, more and more people applied for it, and we could only afford to take 20 people maximum in one course into our data incubator, and usually half of the people continue to work for us.
That's
and
right.
Just imagine, you have hundreds of people coming into it's like a sales funnel, you know what? You have hundreds of people coming in, and then you can really select the people that you want, and at the same time you give them a great, let's say it's a great, they get perfectly trained, they also learn about your company, so it's like a 2 months connecting period. And what was also interesting was that either the people started after this kind of course for us as junior consultants, or customers who were interested and asking us, hey, do you have some kind of cool people or knowledgeable people in this area? We connected them to the customers. So that's what I mean with clever moves. You know what I mean?
So we didn't definitely clever moves.
So it was really, we created, let's say, some symbiosis. You know, it's unfortunately this kind of moves are connected with a lot of work. So thinking only short-term business-wise, you would never do it. You know what I mean?
Of course not.
So much work. But on the other side, what we managed to do by this move was we created a complete community, a platform. And this, in long term, this pays out more than once. And it created an ecosystem of people being interested in the same area, in the same subject, and connecting all these people with us as a company and with our clients. And this is great as an ecosystem. And personally, I believe there will be also an evolution how companies in the future and IT consultancies will work together. I don't think it will be this classical competition scenario. I rather believe it will be something like a fluid network. I cannot elaborate that in detail, but this is my feeling, that also the new generation rather thinks in networks and in collaboration, because I would say competition is good, but spending so much effort in competing each other and trying to pretend something is at the end of the day not really sustainable, I would say.
And the market is so huge.
Exactly, that's what I would say. And that's what you see also by things like when you see the whole open source movement, where people start to collaborate, and particularly when there is a huge opportunity. Okay. Anyway, this was now I only wanted to elaborate by giving you 2 examples, and this example of how we managed to find good people and to attract them. And of course, I could elaborate now even longer on what did we do in order to create a company culture where the people like to work also for us, and where they invested a lot of effort because they were intrinsically interested, and I didn't tell them what was supposed to do, whilst at the same time, it's also clear that business is business and you cannot always do what you want. But I personally believe that the people, or at least over 90% of the people I was dealing with, for them, it was not, they love to work for they love to work. Companies. That's what, yes. Exactly. They love to work, and it's also clear for them that there are things that need to be done, and that they cannot only pick the cherries out of the pie. I mean, that's clear. But as long as it is, you need to make it transparent. And this is exactly the topic. I can remember there was, for example, we had a communication tool, which was a messaging tool, which was called Slack. A great messaging tool, which we introduced from the very beginning in order to have this kind of quick asynchronous communication, which was based on subject and topics. And we had a general channel. And I can tell you, one day there was a guy of our company was asking, hey, what is the managing director doing the whole day in the company? He meant me. Nico, what are you doing the whole day? It's not transparent to me. And my first reflex was, hey, you know what? You shouldn't be so, let's say, I felt attacked, to be honest. But then I realized, and I was like, no, if our company culture is based on transparency, and transparency means that no matter what you do, you need to show, it's your duty to show that you provide value to the group. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And if it's not transparent for them what I'm doing, if they only think that I'm only going, and if they're, in their opinion, I'm only drinking coffee with the clients, and in German we would say I'm the Grüß Gott August, and I'm only shaking hands. I thought, okay, then I need to make a better job in order to make them understand what I'm doing. So I decided to protocol my activities in the Slack channel, and I created a new channel and said, for the ones who are interested, I'm going to protocol my key activities. Whenever I'm doing something, I'm gonna protocol so that you have a feeling. And I've been doing that for 1 week. I've been protocoling what I've been doing, what I was organizing, what I was thinking of, and the major topics I was protocoling. And it was really interesting because the result of the topic was, on the one side, it created transparency for the people. And the second reaction of most of the people was like, thank God I'm not doing your job. You know, it was like for them, because for them, the job was rather interesting. That what was interesting for them was based on content and not on organization around, you know, making the whole thing somehow work.
Together,
you know?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, put the different Lego stones together. And that was that's a nice story anyway. But
that's really
that
nice
was
story.
the philosophy of our company.
But I would
anyway
suggest we move on to your actual company you founded. It's Rubinstein and Schmiedel, and you're doing cryptocurrency stuff. Tell me more about that, Nico.
Okay, here I have to say I'm only a small investor, so it's not any major activity which I have here to do. But it was a former employee of mine, which was a great guy, by the way. And I saw him 3 years in action, and he was Mr. Schmiedel. He's such a great brain, I have to say. And he's been completely, let's say, how do you say, he has an obsession. His obsession was to solve the topic in predicting markets. So this is, I would call it, the mother of all use cases. Stock prediction is like, everyone will tell you, this is crazy, this is not possible using it. And since at that time, he could only get some kind of, he could only get data in the crypto market. He was doing that, trying that out in the nights and weekends with the crypto market. And he more or less founded together with Rubinstein, which is another great guy, this company, which really tries to use I'm talking about absolutely highly sophisticated artificial intelligence in order to predict the crypto markets. I mean, one of like
the Bitcoin yes,
exactly. And they are doing this around with around 30 cryptocurrencies in a couple of stock exchanges. So this is something completely different. I would not consider myself to be a founder of the company, to be honest. I'm rather an investor. now I again changed more or less my role here, because I simply think that we have to support people who have crazy ideas nowadays, or not crazy ideas, who are just. It's I think that's something which is really important, particularly also in Germany, that that we try to do things, even if we think, even if there are 99 reasons why why things should not work, and there is only one thing why, or one reason why it should work. But in a way, I think, and this is exactly the challenge. And as I initially mentioned, I'm now over 50. Once you become older, you've seen so many things that do not work, and that is the reason why older people usually tend to
are pessimistic,
deny
like
ideas.
That, yes.
Exactly. Yeah, they always see the things that do not work. On the other side, I love to see young people which have ideas, which are full of ideas, where I would say this can never work. But I will tell you, there is still this probability that they can work. And the reason why they can work is because the people believe in them. I mean, they need to be, of course, clever, and they need to have a lot of energy, but this is clear. But I believe that I absolutely believe that this synergy of young people and old people learning from each other is the key success for business. Mm-hmm. And that's my take. This is the key success: young and old people, and the willingness and the respect that they want to mutually learn from each other. You're really open.
Do you have any tips for young entrepreneurs, for young founders, with your experience? Maybe some mistakes you made or something like that you can give us.
I would say try to find. Personally, I would say if you really want to found a company, try to find someone who is founding this company together with you. Try to find a co-founder, and try to find someone who is complementary in a way to you. When you are too pessimistic, find someone who is more optimistic. When you're detail driven, find someone who thinks more generic. When you are delivery driven, try to find someone who loves to do sales. You know what I mean? So
find the perfect
counterpart.
Yeah.
Find the perfect opposite, which has total respect towards you. This is something, because you know what? You will, as a founder, always ask yourself, am I doing the things now right? Is this the right thing to do, or should I do this? In the beginning, you will have 1,000 options to do, but you have to focus. And this is the second thing, which I really believe is important. Don't do 10,000 things in parallel. Try then to focus on something and really try to think about what is the proof point for your idea. Try to be honest to yourself. Try then to do the proof point. And if it doesn't work, then be adaptive. Try to be fluid. Try to change the idea. Try to iterate through the idea. Make small steps, step by step. Don't think you have your vision, fine, but in the doing, make the small steps and always test them in the market. Test them in order to see, does it work or not? And one last thing, which I personally believe, is there might be many, many books out, how to found the company, how to what to think about, rules, do's, don'ts, whatever. I would say, okay, you can read some stuff, but don't take everything for granted. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no security that you will succeed. Failure is always part of the process, and trust yourself and be authentic. Personally, I think be authentic. Don't try to do that what someone describes in the book, because this might work for person A, but it might not work for you. You know what? Try to be authentic with what you think and what you believe, and try it out in the market and find your best counterpart in order not to be alone.
That are great ending words, I would say. I'm really thankful for this interview, Nikolaos Radouniklis. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best and hope that we now have a lot of new founders in Germany. Thank you.
I really hope so too. Thank you very much. Full of energy. Okay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.